have some time to catch up on story time. So I spent some years in the Navy. Prior to being a SEAL, I spent a couple years, but it really felt like an eternity. I was stationed at a little base called Naval Air Station Lemoore. For anyone that's familiar with that place, you're going to know exactly what I'm talking about. For anyone that doesn't, Lemoore is in California, but it's not exactly the beach, beautiful parts of California. The allure that people in Lemoore would use to say is that it's only an hour and a half from this, or it's only 2 hours from this, it's only 3 hours from this. So basically what they're saying is it sucks there, but it's within striking distance of places that don't suck. Was an eye-level parachute technician, which basically meant that I was in charge of packing parachutes that were for pilots if they were to eject. That is pretty much where I was stationed. And I made it very apparent that my goal was to go to BUD/S and become a SEAL. Unfortunately, by doing that, the attitude that my command, my immediate division there, kind of took that as, is that they thought that I was better than them because I wanted to be a SEAL and not a parachute rigger. Which part of that was true. I didn't think that I was better than them. I just knew that I was not fulfilled by packing parachutes in an air-conditioned paraloft. That just was not what I was there to do. So they told me a bunch of things. They're like, okay, if you get air warfare qualled, you make petty officer, then and do a deployment, then we'll see about sending you to BUD/S, which they're not in charge of sending you to BUD/S. They're not in charge of that. They're just not going to help you. So, but I also knew that by doing all the things they asked of me would take away any ammunition that they had of trying to get in my way. So I made it my goal to get air warfare qualled, to make petty officer, to get a deployment done, and that was my goal. Of my sub goal was those three things. My main goal was to get my package together, submit it, get in shape, go to BUD/S. That was my mission while I was there. I ran into a lot of drama while I was there because some of the, and I don't want to say higher ups like staff officers or anything like that. This is really just like petty officers and chiefs that were above me that didn't like my attitude. And I didn't have an attitude in the traditional sense that you might think, and that I treated everyone with respect. But the fact that during my lunch breaks, I would go to the gym and work out. So my schedule was really, I would work out in the morning, I would work out during my lunch break, and then I would work out again after work. So I was generally getting 3 sessions a day, almost every day. Some people started to complain. When I say some people, it was just really a few people that were that were just a couple of ranks higher than me, that were in charge of me, like my LPO, the division LPO, the chief, things like that. They didn't like the fact that I was working out during my lunch break, and then later on, I would take a quick break to eat food that I've already had pre-made and just shovel it down really quick. And my explanation to that was, all the people that are outside in the smoke pit smoking cigarettes right now are on break, are they not? If they're on break, I'm taking a break to eat food, they can take a break to smoke a cigarette. And they honestly tried telling me that if I wanted to take a smoke, they honestly tried telling me that if I wanted to take a smoke break, I could take a smoke break, but I can't take an eating break because they've already supplied time for me to eat. I did a silent protest in that I took my food and ate it out in the smoke pit next to all the smokers. Instead of eating it in the kitchen, I just moved to the smoke pit to eat it there. And there was really nothing they could say or do beyond that point, because I was actually taking much less of breaks than any smoker, for sure. But because I didn't smoke, I went out there, ate a lunch, and went back to work. So that's just an example of some of the drama that I had to go through. Then, fast forward a little bit of time here. I've now completed a deployment. I've now become air warfare qualled, and I made petty officer. So I did all the things they asked of me to do, and they were still doing illegal things to me. I would quite literally, I'm submitting a buds package, and my chief refused to send it up the chain of command. Straight up refused. He's not even allowed to do that. This isn't like, it's not a request permission. It's a chain of command to inform them what I'm doing. It's not a permission, but he treated it like he was a gatekeeper, and he would not run this up the chain of command. And I knew it was illegal, because it's not up to him if I go to buds or not. So what I did was I waited until my chief went on leave. And when he went on leave, I walked right to my division officer's office and let her know what I was doing, and that the chief was well aware that I was routing this, because he was well aware that I was routing this. I didn't tell her that he was denying it every time, and she signed off on it, and it went right up the chain. Then, fast forward a few weeks later, I had to do a det. I had to do a short few week det out on an aircraft carrier. I did that, and when I came back, I was back for not even a day, and the office was like panicking because they forgot to send another parachute rigger out to sea on a different aircraft carrier. I poked my head in the office and I said, I hear you guys need a parachute rigger for this det. And I'll never forget my chief looking up at me, and he said, Divine, we can't ask you to do this because you just got back. But if you volunteer to do this, I will do everything in my power to make sure you get to buds. And I just said, remember those words. My bags are still packed. I'm ready to go. So an hour later, was driving down to hop on a flight that flew me out to the aircraft carrier, and I was there for a few more weeks. After I volunteered for that, the commanding officer of the entire command comes into the paraloft, which he never does. Never. I call attention on deck because we have the CO coming in. He's like, at ease, I just wanted to find the parachute rigger that volunteered to go out to sea again, back to back, to help out this command. And I was like, well, sir, that's me. He's like, I just want to come shake your hand and say thank you. And I was like, wow. He's like, is there anything that I can do for you? I was like, sir, as a matter of fact, there is. I just put a package in to go to buds, and it should be on your desk any day. He's like, done. He's like, done. I'll make sure that makes its way through. I'm like, awesome. He's like, is there anything else I can do for you? He's like, that was easy. Anything else I can do for you? I was like, well, sir. Now I'm like throwing Hail Marys here. I have the CO of the command asking me if there's anything he could do for me. So I was like, there's a lot of people going to special programs that before they go TAD to the diver command here on base, because they had a diver command that would run this dunk tank. And there's guys that were going special programs, whether it be diver, SWIC, EOD, buds. Guys would go train with the divers for a few months prior to going to buds or whatever special program they're going to. He's like, done. I'll have your TAD orders waiting for you when you get back off this det. I'm like, oh yeah. I was like, thank you, sir. Thank you very much. That's going to help so much. So I go do this det for a few weeks, and I come back. My command has no idea about this. So I come back, and I have my T80 orders in hand the day I get back. They were so pissed, but I end up getting my T80 orders and my buds orders when I get back. So I now know that I have, it looks like 3 or 4 months was the timeline that I had before I was going to be leaving to go to buds. So now I'm T80 to the diver unit, which was awesome because all I did was train, help out the divers, and get kind of hazed by divers. Like, they were really prepping me with dive physics, treading water, working tanks. Like a lot of the stuff that you do at dive school was what they were doing to me. And it was a lot of help. And training was really like the priority. Like, I had a lot of time to train, a lot of time to work out. It was really good. Now, during this time, my command was, when I say my command, it was the division I was in. My division was not very happy. When I say my division, the LPO, the chief, they were not very happy. So, I ended up getting into a car accident. Just circumstance. I got into a pretty serious car accident. A flip-over car accident where the car flipped over multiple times. Miraculously, I was not harmed at all. I had some glass in my hair. My feet were a little banged up because I was wearing flip-flops. But, like, I was fine. And I went to work and filed a accident report or something at my T80 command. Well, within a few days, my actual command found out about this, my division, and they ended up using that as an excuse to recall me because they said that I didn't fill out an accident report with them. And I don't understand what that means, but they used that as an excuse to pull me back to my parent command and cancel my T80 status. So they kind of like backdoored me somehow. He ended up talking to like the master chief of the command or something like that. And I had friends at my division that overheard the office talking about me, and they found out that if they can find a way to NJP me, I won't be able to go to buds. So they were devising a plan to NJP me somehow, but they needed to have reasons to actually NJP me. But the only way they can get reasons to NJP me is to actually have me back. So they used that as an excuse to pull me back. Then they started putting me on the watch bill randomly. I'm talking like the watch bill comes out once a week, you know when it is. But I got a phone call one night from the person that was on watch ahead of me saying, "Hey, are you on your way here?" And I was like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "Yeah, you're on the watch bill." So luckily I was on base, and I just drove in, had my uniform in the car, so I was only like a few minutes late, but the guy basically just covered for me. He was like, "Yeah, man, no worries." Like, it looked like my name was quite literally, a name was crossed out and my name was written in. So I spent the next week checking the watch bill every day, every night, calling in, making sure that my name didn't get switched. And that's also when I found out that there was some kind of conspiracy going on to try to find a reason to NJP me. So at this point, I'm like kind of scrambling on what to do because I'm like quite literally afraid of my career here, that they're going to try to find a reason to NJP me to ruin my hopes and dreams of going to buds. They also talked to me and they said, "Hey, by the way, we know that your head's not in the game anymore because you're concentrating on going to buds and you have your orders to go to buds. So we're not going to have you work on any parachutes. We're just going to have you do sewing projects," which is like, that's what you do when you're the most greenest, newest parachute rigger. You sew. You just sew. So you just sit in the sewing room and just sew. And I was like, I'm not going to do this. There's no way. So I literally call the detailer, the guy who's in charge of cutting orders to go to buds, and I call him and I'm like, "Hey man," I'll never forget, he had like a really thick like Tennessee accent. And I was like, "Hey man, at my command, they are trying to find reasons to NJP me to not let me go to buds. Is there any way to get me into an earlier class And he's like, oh man, I'm sorry about that, but there's no way we can do that. That's a really bad accent, I know. But he's like, the classes are full. I was like, well, what can we do? He's like, well, how much leave do you have in the books? And I was like, wow. I was like, you know what? I'm at maximum leave because I didn't take any leave and I went on deployment. I was in a use or lose status. I had so much leave saved up. It wasn't even funny. And I said, I have a lot of leave. He's like, well, technically I can only authorize you 15 days of leave. I was like, oh man. He's like, but if you had a family emergency, I could authorize you more leave. I was like, I have a family emergency. And he was like, roger that. He authorized me the maximum amount of leave that you can take. I want to say it was like 45 days. It was something like either 45 or 60 days. It was something ridiculous. I ended up putting in for leave, for transfer leave, and was granted it. And so I ended up checking out mere days after they tried screwing me with this NJP conspiracy. So the office, oh my gosh, I will never forget. I want to name him so bad because he was the LPO at the time, but I'm not going to name him. For anyone who actually knows me at Lemoore, his last name started with an F and ended with a, I'm not going to say. But I go into the office with my checkout sheet and my orders because you basically get your checkout, you start checking out 10 days or something. I want to say it was like 7 or 10 days prior to leaving, you're allowed to start your checkout procedures, which means that you're not on the clock, like you don't work, your entire job is just checking out. I go in there and I drop that on his desk and he looks at it and he's like, get the fuck out of my office, Divine. Get the fuck out. Get the fuck out. And he just starts yelling that as I close the door and I'm like smiling, walking away out of the office. He's just like, fuck you, Divine. Get the fuck out. And the door slams. You can still hear the muffled curse words. Anyhow. So the next day I was just checking out. So I just checked out for the next 10 days. I put in for leave. Got it granted. Drove down to San Diego. Checked into like the Navy hotel. And basically for the next month and a half, I just hung out in Coronado and I trained. I ran on the beach every day. I trained and just prepared to check in for buds. And then when I finally checked in, I mean, I've been running on that beach every day leading up to that, just doing soft sand runs in boots, just doing the O course, doing ocean swims, doing all the things. And I felt pretty damn prepared when we classed up. But it's funny because, I mean, I don't talk a lot about how I got to buds, but this story is very much a story of don't let anyone tell you no. Don't let anyone ever tell you no. And if someone tells you no and you want it bad enough, you will find a way. I burned the boats. I burned every bridge I had. I volunteered for things. I did better than everyone else in so many different areas just so that it would look stupid for them to deny me. So my story of getting to buds was probably much cooler than any story I have of being at buds. Because everyone's told the story of buds, and my experience is probably very similar to many. But if you guys don't know, the Navy is not set up to streamline guys from the fleet to buds. You have to crawl your way through broken glass to get there. But if you want it bad enough, you can make it happen.